Hi, this is Dan, the instructor from engineering ethics. This is going to be a quick video going over the grading policy. I have some uh, peculiarities to the way that I grade, and I think I grade pretty harshly. I have lots of extra credit assignments and lots of other sort of leeway that people don't tend to do so badly in the class. But I want to just make the grading policy clear for everyone who's taking the class so that they know what to expect. So let's go ahead and jump into the presentation. This presentation is on Moodle, and you can see it on Moodle and go through it yourself in more detail. Like I said, I'm the instructor for engineering ethics at NJIT. This is my regular policy for grading. So just to start, my teaching goals for the class is to foster a supportive peer discussion, foster a supportive environment where peer discussion can happen, where students feel free to express themselves honestly, where they feel empowered, like encouraged to critically engage each other, to ask questions, to challenge each other's beliefs, to express differences and not just agreement. The point of this class is to have you reflect on your own values and how you act or might act in certain situations, and what that says about your perspective, about your ethics, and then how that relates to, maybe agrees with or just doesn't agree with the values and actions of other people. We'll look at a lot of case studies so you can see how this works out in actual professional environments, in real cases where lives are actually on the line, possibly lost. But the point is for you to sort of think about these situations in the neutral class environment where there aren't any lives on the line while we're talking about this in the classroom. So we can think about it critically. We can see the problem from as many sides as possible. And the idea is that when you actually are an engineer, have an engineering license, and are actually responsible for the lives of people, for your technicians or your other engineers working with you, or for the people that are going to use the things that you build, right? Sometimes it's difficult in those moments to see the ethical problems at all, and especially if you haven't spent some time thinking about ethics, you won't have time in those moments to consider what your ethical values are, right? So think about those things now while you have the time and luxury to spend some time in a philosophy class, so that way when you're on the job, you can act quickly. So these are the goals, and what that means is that I want something that's going to set you up to be as engaged with the material, with the course content, and with each other as possible. So the first thing to say about this, and I want to be perfectly clear about this, is that your grade will not depend on whether I agree with you about anything you say. In fact, I might strongly disagree with you, and that could be a good thing. Sometimes when I see things in the discussion forums, I'll sort of engage. I usually don't say too much in the discussion forums, but sometimes I'll respond to things just to sort of provoke discussion, provoke agreement or disagreement. There's a tendency in these discussion forums for students to agree. Agreeing is the path of least resistance. If you find someone that you agree with that has a view very close to yours and you echo that agreement, it's very unlikely to cause any problems, right? No one's going to have a problem with that. But challenging someone, saying that you disagree, saying that you have a different perspective, that can ruffle feathers, and sometimes that makes things more complicated. We have this sort of social tendency to avoid that kind of thing. Well, this is a philosophy class, and part of the challenge is to think critically about these issues. Part of the point is to challenge our own thoughts, our own presumptions about what we think of ourselves. Maybe your values aren't well worked out. Maybe you haven't thought a lot about these things, and now's the time. There's a time and place for everything, and they call it college. Right? So now's the time to think about this. In a classroom like this, it can be a supportive environment, a respectful environment. Right? Our jobs aren't on the line. No lives are on the line. Our careers aren't on the line. The most that's on the line is your grade. And so that's why I want to make clear that your grade won't depend on whether I agree with you. So I don't want you to try to say what you think I want to hear. What I want to hear is what you think. So don't try to say the nice thing that I'll agree with. I have very controversial views, and some of these views will come out in the lectures. I don't expect you to agree with me either. Part of the reason for me, sometimes I'll state a view even more strongly than I actually think it, in order to be provocative and provoke discussion. I don't expect you to agree with me. None of your grade depends on how much you agree with me. The more you disagree with me and show me, critical engagement from an opposing perspective, the more you'll probably do better in the course that way. Now, I say I'm encouraging disagreement and criticism. Make sure it's respectful. Make sure it's not attacking another person. Don't use insults. Don't make other people feel unwelcome to the conversation. Right. So there's a difference between disagreement and criticism and harassment or bullying or personal attacks that make people feel uncomfortable or afraid or unwelcome. Insults, slurs, racial slurs, these kinds of things can be corrosive to discussion. So make sure we don't do that, right? Make sure we're respectful, make sure that we know that everyone's perspective here is encouraged to contribute. You want to hear what other people have to say. And when you disagree, it's because, it's for the purpose of hearing everyone's voice, right? It's not for the purpose of shutting anyone out. It's for the purpose of making sure that everyone can contribute. Sometimes people have positions that shut other people down and make them not want to contribute, even if you're not insulting them directly. The point of the class is to get everyone in on the game. So not only about my own values, about whether your grade depends on whether you agree with me, but also if you have trouble speaking English. So I know a lot of students at NJIT are not native English speakers, and maybe you don't feel perfectly comfortable speaking English. That's fine. The writing in this class will not depend on, your grade in the class will not depend on how well it's written, how grammatically correct it is. It needs to be as clear as possible so they know what you're saying, and so the other people who are reading can engage your material. But if you make an effort for clarity, clarity and your own perspective are more important than grammatical perfection or any kind of rigorous essay structure. I want to see your thoughts, your unique perspective. So this is what the grading rubric, which we're about to go into, is designed to do. It's designed to reward independent exploration, your own personal contributions, to reinforce critical engagement. You get more points for disagreement than you will agreement. And for focusing on the big picture, especially as it relates to your future career. Not everyone in this class is engineers. I say this in the welcome video, but not everyone in the class is an engineer. If you have non-engineering experience that's relevant to the discussion, if you want to add your perspective as an architect or as a pre-med, you're planning on going into medical school or becoming a doctor, these are the kinds of things that might give you a different perspective on the issue. Add those perspectives. That's exactly what we're hoping to see, is your unique talents and interests brought to bear on these discussions. If you have work experience, many of you have already been on the job and have already worked in professional environments where some of these ethical issues have come up. A lot of students have worked fast food, where they've seen things that make them uneasy, maybe wanting to blow a whistle. Talk to us about those things. Those things are the interesting stuff that lets us see how the actual professional environment works. So the grading rubric here is designed to encourage you to contribute these things. So in the welcome video, I went over some of this stuff already, but this is the quantitative grading policy, how many points each thing is worth. Each lesson is worth 100 points. That's 20 points for your quiz, 80 points for discussion. So the bulk of your grade is coming from discussion. That's 50 points for your essay. So half of the weekly lesson is just in your essay. I'll say this one more time. I say 400-word essay, and I'll say essay a couple of times, but you can also do video essays. And I'll talk about how video essays make a difference in a little bit. Video essays are half, or your essay, your post is half of the points for the lesson. Quiz is 20%, and your replies are 30%. Your replies are 150-word paragraph length responses, 15 points each. Your research projects are worth a little bit more. The post, your research essay, is worth 100 points by itself, and then an initial 30 points for the replies and 20 points for the anti-bibliography. Makes it for 150 points. So your research essay is worth twice what a normal post is worth. So keep that in mind. 1600 points for the full semester, that's your grading scale. So The rest of this video is mostly going to be about the abstract grading policy. So what is my grading rubric like? What am I looking for in your posts? How does my grading, how do I decide how many points to give you according to this policy? And the first thing to say about my grading policy is the following. So this is what I mean when I said that the grading is a little bit strict, is that the default grade, so the way that I grade is that you earn a default grade for meeting certain requirements, and then you can improve that from the default, or you can go down from the default also. So the default grade is 80%, is 40 points out of 50. So if you meet the minimum requirements for the post, then you earn an 80% by default, and then you can improve from that, or you can go down from 80%, 40 points. Now, I say this is a strict policy because what this means is that the grades tend towards 80%. If you're just meeting the minimum requirements, remember the minimum requirements are a 400-word post. So if you're just meeting those minimum requirements and you're not going above and beyond that, then you're probably going to get a 40 points out of 50, which is an 80%, which is a B. If you want better than a B, then you have to go beyond the minimum requirements. Beyond the minimum requirements means deeply engaging with the material. Show me that you're not just commenting on it, but that you're sort of taking it seriously, that you're thinking it through, that you spend some time on it. It's clear when you spend time on this material, and it's clear when you're sort of responding immediately. So spend time on the material. It'll show in your work. Do independent research. If you turn up material other than just what I've presented, additional research that you know, articles that you've read on the same topic, and if it's relevant to the conversation, you can bring in outside sources. That helps. Maybe the easiest one to do is to synthesize across multiple sources. So I give lots of reading every week. If you can show how two readings relate to each other, right? Not just talk about one and then talk about the other, but sort of tie them together and show how it brings out the general course themes. Or even better than two materials within one lesson is if you can relate across lessons, right? So back in lesson 2, we talked about this, in lesson 5, we talked about this, and here we are in lesson 8 talking about this, and this is how they're all related. That's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. That's the kind of stuff that makes a teacher excited. And that's the kind of stuff that'll raise your grade from the default of 40 points to 45 points, 50 points, full post grade. So you can raise grade from the default. You can also lose points from the default. Anything that looks rushed or superficial, the more editing mistakes there are. I'm not looking for grammar so much, but misspellings, right? It's not hard for even non-native speakers to do a spell check. Right, so I strongly recommend writing your post in a Word document before posting it on the forums. This will help you do spell check and grammar check. Make sure you're doing as high quality work as you can. Knee-jerk reactions, writing off the top of your head. If it sounds like you just read the thing and then you're just writing, especially if it sounds like you're writing these things in the last 5 minutes before the deadline, that shows very clearly in your work, and that'll end up with points getting taken off. Merely stating an opinion without critical reflection. Opinions are cheap, right? So the class is about having your perspective and articulating it in class. But having perspectives, this is the minimum requirements. Having perspective is fairly easy. I mean, everyone has one, everyone has an opinion. You can make up opinions sort of off the top of your head. If I show you something controversial, you'll have an opinion immediately. And stating your opinion, that's fine, that meets the minimum requirements. But if you show that you're thinking carefully about it, you have your opinion, and then you give it a second thought, maybe a third thought, and then you maybe do some research and come to a more informed opinion, right? That's what I want to see to gain points from the default. I'm not doing that, just sort of knee-jerk reaction, last-minute responses. Consider other perspectives. If you write from a perspective and it seems like you can't see how anyone would disagree, right? This is sort of a failure of critical thinking. If you fail to properly cite your sources, the biggest reason that people lose points is failing to meet the actual deadlines for the assignments. So there's a strict deadline. Late policy is very strict. Most people lose points from the late policy. This is my general grading policy, going up and down from this default grade. Oops. In case you missed that, one more time, meeting the minimum requirements, 400 words with minimum engagement with some of the sources, that's a B grade, 40 out of 50. If you want better than a B grade, then you're gonna need to do more than just that, 500 words maybe, deeper engagement across multiple sources, right? So A level work is deep engagement with material. B-level work is adequate engagement with material. C-level work is below the minimum engagement. So if you're far under 400 words, if you're not really talking about the material, but just sort of talking about the topic, right? That's below minimal engagement. So you need to go beyond the minimum to earn an A in the class. So I mean, this is my policy. Engineering ethics shouldn't be very easy to fail, and it should be pretty easy to get a B. Right? If you do the work, you'll get a B in the class. But if you want an A in the class, you need to put in the effort, and that requires doing a little bit more. So this is all copied and pasted from the syllabus. You can find this in detail in the syllabus. I just want to go over this briefly so you have some idea. What I mean by an A posts are 45 points or greater. Posts are at most 50 points. So if you're earning between 45 and 50 points, you're doing well on the posts. Doing well on the posts, to my mind, means somewhere around 500 words or 5-minute video essay. And in either case, it needs to deeply engage with the full lesson, offering critical insights and careful reflection, incorporating many of the lesson themes, some of the readings, and showing an appreciation and deep understanding of the concepts, and then presenting it in a unified way. Right? So the essay sort of well written and encapsulates the sort of full picture, full scope of the lesson. 500 words or 5 minutes of video. Video, I've seen students do very good videos. I've seen students do very, very poor videos, just like with the writing. Poor videos are videos that aren't well prepared, that they're just sort of talking off the top of their head, just sort of talking to the camera. Good videos are the ones that are prepared, maybe has a presentation, like the PowerPoint presentation that they walk through as they, right? So something that shows me that you've thought about it, sort of collected your thoughts in a careful way before putting them on video. A-level posts sort of incorporate the full course lesson. They draw explicit connections between the sources. They use direct quotes, so they cite from the material so you can point to exactly the terms being used. They offer original interpretation of the terms. They offer their own definitions. For instance, they don't just cite the dictionary definitions, but they give their own definitions and show how they relate to the conversation. Drawing explicit connections between not just sources, but between lessons are the kind of things I like. If you can remind us what we learned in earlier lessons and how it still applies in these later lessons, that's stuff I like. Personal experience, job experience, other anecdotes, I've talked about this a little bit already. That's the kind of stuff that'll bump your grade up to an A also. Also, further research. If you're looking to other sources, if you've done other research on the material, research beyond Wikipedia even, that's the kind of stuff that I like. And remember, provide citations for all those sources. So that's an A post. A B post is a little bit less than that, but still meeting the minimum requirements. So the minimum requirements are 400 words. If you have around 350 words, 400 words, you're in the B level post, 3 minutes of video. A B level post engages with one source or maybe two sources, and engages directly with them, has some things to say about one source, but it doesn't really rise to the level of full appreciation of the entire lesson. That's fine. If you just want to write about one source and sort of talk about it deeply, that's good. B-level post that meets the minimum requirements, that's what I'm looking for. Sort of big picture stuff is for the A-level work, but if you're fine with the B, just talk about one of the articles and give it a good treatment. Give your own thoughts, give your own opinions, that's fine. And not sort of deep critical engagement or original research, but any sort of thoughts and opinions you have on the topic. And this is B-level work. This is meeting the minimum requirements. And then you're providing citations for all that work. This is the minimum requirements for posting on the assignment, right? So this is the default grade. Meeting these minimum requirements gives you the default grade of 40%, 40 points, 80%. C-level work is below this. So 35 points, to remember, is what you get if it's late work. Anything below that is going to be C-level work. C-level work is posting around 250, 300 words below B-level work. Maybe you mention a few sources, but you're not really deeply engaged with them. You don't quote anything. You don't use any terminology from this post. You just mention the author. That's kind of superficial engagement. This is C-level work. If you're mostly offering trite wisdom or cliche, if there's some cliche line like some trite wisdom, solution's always in the middle. I mean, it's not really true, but it's the kind of thing that sounds good. So people say it and they might use that to draw some lesson. This isn't really original thinking, it's just cliche thinking. And so this is C-level work also. Below minimum requirement, it shows a lack of deep engagement. Really what it shows is a lack of time. You didn't really spend much time on it, you sort of put the first thoughts you had. Not only cliches, but only talking about movies and other popular media. If all of your discussion of robots talks about movie robots, when we're talking about like technological employment and the effect on industry and the engineering profession. I mean, movie robots are fun to talk about, but they're not really so informative about our world. Try to talk about real things. Try to do real research. Try not to just immerse yourself in the world of fiction. I mean, it's fine to talk about movies, but I'm just saying this is sort of C-level work is not quite meeting my expectations. Things that are rushed to meet the deadline. If your assignment is published 5 minutes before the deadline, you're probably just typing it for the last 45 minutes, and that's going to reflect badly on your paper. It's going to reflect badly. It's going to cause your material to be worse quality also. So rush to meet the deadlines is going to lose you points. Missing the deadlines and actually turning in late work is also going to lose you points. Failure to cite your sources is below minimum expectations. If your post is late, it cannot earn more than 75 points, or than 35 points. Below C work, I don't have criteria for D. Anything less than 24 points is an F. F fails to meet even the minimally adequate standards. No discussion of any sources, no discussion of any of the texts, no discussion of any outside research, no critical engagement. If I can't understand what's going on, not just that it's grammatically incorrect, that's fine, I'm not going to mark you down for that, but if it's incoherent where I don't quite understand. Sometimes this happens, I think, with students who use translators who aren't quite comfortable with English and use translator tools and then just sort of copy and paste full translations. That doesn't work very well, and it makes obscure writing. So you can use a translator. When you use a translator, read it over again and make sure it makes sense. And if you don't do that, then it'll end up getting marked down. If you submit posts after the late deadline, it still might be within the reply deadline. Some might get 10 points. Just a heads up. Replies are graded on basically the same kind of scale, except just for 15 points. So 13 to 15 points is like an A reply, 200 words or so. The minimum requirement is 150 words, and that's like 10 to 12 points. Less than 100 words, little engagement, 7 to 9 points. Less than 5 points is you're getting something that's late and very, very poor engagement. This is fine. You might post a lot of short replies and build up 30 points that way. You can't earn more than 30 points on replies, but you can post a couple of shorter replies and get more points that way. But this is the way that I'm grading the scale. Another thing to mention here is that I don't give a lot of feedback, written feedback on your writing. Your feedback is basically going to be your grade. So if you want feedback, find your grade. And the way the grades work is that you have your posts, and underneath the post has a rating. And the rating is something that no one else can see, only I can see it and you can see it. And the rating tells you your grade, so it tells you your points that you earned for that assignment. That's the ratings on the bottom of your posts, and your replies will be the same. And that grade will be your feedback. So you can use that grade to go back to the rubric that we just went through and figure out how I'm evaluating your work. If you think that I'm making a mistake, that you did more work than I'm giving you credit for, then send me an email and say, hey, can you regrade this assignment? I think you graded it wrong. And I'd be happy to look at anything you ask me to regrade. I have a lot of students. I go through the grading somewhat quickly, so I can make mistakes. So if you find mistakes, let me know. Use your grade as feedback. I poke into the discussion forums every once in a while, and I'll have these weekly hangouts where you can talk to me about whatever you want. But otherwise, that's all the feedback you're going to get from the course. See the syllabus for more details. The last thing to say is about the plagiarism policy. So Plagiarism's it's a problem, and it's a problem I have to deal with every semester. I've just accepted that it happens every semester. At least one, but sometimes two or three or up to 5 students a semester will end up plagiarizing substantially on one or more assignments. This happens most during the research projects. So the first line of defense is that you have to turn in the research projects to Turnitin, which is a plagiarism detection device. And I only do this for weeks 10 and 11, but I do extensive plagiarism checking in weeks 10 and 11. The Turnitin checks it against all the other student papers, and then it checks against all the stuff online. So if it finds matches, if Turnitin finds matches that substantial amount of your work was plagiarized from another source, then this is the policy. So it's a serious violation. In the University Honor Code, it describes plagiarism as the written use of work prepared by another, but then submitting it as your own without appropriate citation or credit. Intentionally or knowingly representing the words or ideas of another's as your own in any academic exercise. So failing to cite a source, right? If you take a quote and you fail to attribute to that quote to its author, right? That's a kind of plagiarism. If you paraphrase from Wikipedia, even if you slightly change the language, it still might count as plagiarism, even if you cite the source, because you're presenting work that's not yours as your own, right? So if you use Wikipedia, you put Wikipedian citations, but then the actual body of the text is sort of light paraphrase of the Wikipedia. You change some words, you maybe rearrange some sentences, but mostly it's just what you took from Wikipedia, just changed around a little bit. Even if you put it in the citations, that still might count as plagiarism because you're presenting work that's not yours as your own, and that's how the university defines plagiarism. In particular, copying from any source and altering any word or phrase to avoid exact quotation, that's also plagiarism, right? So it's not just copying directly, changing certain words into other words or changing the arrangement of words, that's also plagiarism. In the syllabus, I link to a resource that explains what plagiarism is. So I'll just do this really briefly. So this isn't the source that's linked on the syllabus, and you can go to you can look on the presentation, the Prezi for the grading policy to go through this in more detail. But here's the actual source taken from this book. Word for word plagiarism just copies the source almost directly. Critical care nurses have a hierarchy of roles. Critical care nurses function in a hierarchy of roles. So what they did is they took out the word function, but it's still the same sentence. Right? This is plagiarism. This is word for word plagiarism, even though there's some editing going on. It's not just copied and pasted the entire paragraph, but significant chunks of it are copied and pasted from the original source. That's word for word plagiarism. But most of the time that I catch students, it's plagiarism that's patchwork, right? So this, you can go over this in more detail yourself to see exactly how the passages are connected. But this is only really getting these sort of phrases, but the phrases are structuring the whole paragraph in exactly the same way that this paragraph is structured. So this is not legitimate paraphrase either. This is a kind of plagiarism, right? It's kind of plagiarism because the structure and a lot of the content of this work, even though it's cited directly, is being presented as the author's, as the student's work, even though it's not their own work. Right? The whole structure of this paragraph is based on the work of Chase, but it's presented as the student's own work. Right? So that's not legitimate. That's illegitimate paraphrase. A legitimate paraphrase would be a complete rewriting of the paragraph, where you take the paragraph, you understand what the paragraph means, and then you write it again from scratch in your own words, not using any of the phrase structure or terminology, or if you do use a phrase structure and terminology, you're quoting it directly, right, with page numbers and so on. Right, so that's how legitimate paraphrases work. This catches students all the time. Every semester, I send students warnings about illegitimate paraphrase or just direct plagiarism, copy and pasting from Wikipedia. So the class policy looks like this. If I find a case of suspected plagiarism, I will give you 0 credit for that assignment, even for one of the big research projects. In fact, I catch most of the students for the big research projects, and they lose the big 100 points on those assignments. 0 credit on that assignment, and I'll send you a letter of warning telling you that I did it and why I thought it was plagiarism, and to mark that you did it. If it's just a case of poor paraphrase like this, as far as if you just did a piece of paraphrase like this, what'll happen is you'll get 0 credit and an explanation. If it's worse than that, if it's lots of Wikipedia full copying and pasting, or if you do it on multiple assignments, if I catch you once and send you a warning and then I catch you again, then those violations, in addition to 0 credit, will get referred to the Dean of Students with a recommendation to fail the course. Repeated instances of plagiarism, repeated instances of cheating will not be tolerated. 0 credit on the assignment for innocent mistakes about exactly what counts as paraphrasing. I know you're not all English majors. So 0 credit, that's the penalty. You can still pass the class once doing this, but if it happens again, or if I'm seeing extreme cases, it'll go to the Dean of Students with a recommendation to fail the course, and then you have to take it again. This is an ethics class. Don't cheat in an ethics class. It would teach you nothing if I let you get away with cheating, right, with a huge ethical violation in an ethics class. Me telling you that you can get away with cheating in an ethics class just tells you that you can get away with cheating and ethical violations elsewhere. So I'm keen to be very strict about the plagiarism policy. Don't cheat in an ethics class. If you do cheat in an ethics class, I will make sure that you remember that you failed the assignment or you failed the course because you cheated in ethics class. It's the kind of thing that maybe you'll remember. All right. That's the grading and plagiarism policy. There are more details. All those details are in the syllabus. This is just to sort of get you the high-level overview, how the default grading procedure works, what the rubric is like. I hope that makes some sense of it. Let me know if you have any questions. Send me an email. Ask questions in the open threads in the discussion forums. All right, thank you very much. And I'll talk to you later.